Hello, welcome to another episode of Live Reflections. Today we have a truly inspiring guest who is making significant strides in the clean energy sector with a wealth of experience in business strategy, product management, and engineering. Our guest has dedicated his career to creating and delivering innovative, sustainable solutions that address global energy challenges. Currently, he serves as the director of the Center of Excellence for Energy Sciences and E-Mobility at Atria University. His journey spans continents and industries from spearheading tech-driven portfolios at Fenix Energy to consulting on rooftop solar and microgrids. So whether you are a seasoned professional in the energy field or someone curious about starting a career in this vital industry, today's conversation promises valuable insights. We are excited to dive deep into his experiences, explore the future of energy, and discuss how the next generation can make their mark. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Abhishek Padmanabhan to the show. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Abhishek. We are really
Thank you, Bharti, for inviting me. Glad to be here. Yeah.
So my first question to you is, what inspired you to pursue a career in clean energy? Can you take us through your journey?
So I think I've been interested on the engineering side of things and technology side of things since I was a kid. My kids, some family also helped reinforce that decision for me. I mean, graciously did well in IIT JEE, which allowed me to get a rank and place of my choosing in the IITs. So I chose electrical engineering because I thought it was a more fundamental course to what I was doing. I think given my uncle and extended family, they also gave me a lot of exposure to the energy sector as a kid, which really helped. And I could see the scale of the problem which was ahead of us, could see, it being a very interdisciplinary field seemed quite exciting. So I took electrical engineering at IIT Bombay. Even there, I did a couple of internships at Alstom and Siemens, which really helped, again, cement this particular thing. In addition, had a couple of good professors who nudged me in the correct direction. Then subsequently decided to, narrow down further on what I wanted to do in the sector by doing a master's at Cornell, where I focused on power systems primarily. That was a very interesting time because I think at Cornell, again, a couple of very excellent professors there, different experiences and a completely different market to explore. So North America fundamentally different from India and how it operates.
Yeah.
I also got involved in a project at Cornell for the electricity grid of Cornell University. So it was a live project that I was doing as part of my master's thesis. Could actually see what was going on in real time within the campus itself, right? So it was quite interesting in that sense. This is around the time when 2014-15, when I graduated, is around the time when solar energy was becoming really mainstream in the US.
Booming. Yes.
In India, it would follow in like a couple of years, but in the US, that was around the time when it was becoming mainstream. And I think it was a very interesting time because solar is fundamentally very different from your traditional coal plants or oil plants, not just in how clean it is, but in how it behaves. So inherently, you can't control solar the way you can control coal. You can't switch off or switch on the plant as you will. It's really dependent on the sun. It's intermittent in nature. There's a cloud flying, you will have, a sudden drop in power. There's a daytime dependence. So again, you can't do it at night. And so all of these add
a lot of challenges,
which can be kind of addressed with battery storage, but battery storage wasn't there yet, right? It was still very expensive. So you have to kind of figure out how to get there eventually. Then what I really enjoyed was the trifecta of traditional electrical engineering, a bit of modeling, computer modeling and economics, where I think typically when you look at electricity, it's really just not a technical thing. It's an intersection of policy, there's data, there's economics, all of which comes in. Just to give you an example, because this is ultimately a service that you provide to customers, there is pricing and so on, which becomes a very integral part of it. So in the US also, the system is a lot more complex. So you don't have pricing which is fixed. Say if you consume a unit in the morning, it can cost differently from when you consume the same unit in the evening.
Oh, wow. I didn't
Based on
know
the
about that.
supply and demand. So based on the supply and demand. So it becomes a lot more complex, because more market driven. And that's where I thought I'd take my next step. So I actually joined the system operator. So this is New York's ISO, which is the independent system operator. This is the organization which kind of controls the electricity grid, creates some of the policies for it, and controls the energy market in the state of New York. So it's a quasi-governmental organization which does this.
Okay.
There I got a wealth of experience looking at it, the entirety of the grid from like a 30,000 feet view, how it's being managed on a day-to-day basis, real-time basis, how new policies are being set and implemented, and what are the technical considerations that go behind them. So that's pretty much my role was at the time, solar and what you call broadly call a class of distributed energy resources. So these are all resources which are spread out instead of being concentrated like a coal plant. So they were all coming on board around 2016 or so, creating mechanisms for pricing them, creating strategies for managing that intermittency in the grid and so on. So I think the a few projects along the way which focused on these distributed energy resources and gave a wealth of experience in that front, both in terms of how these uh, how these policies actually get implemented on ground, what goes behind framing these policies. So good insight on that and a very holistic view overall. I moved to Ontario Power in mid 2017 or so, which is Canada's largest utility. So this is basically the DISCOM for people who are familiar in India with that language. Right. So they actually, again, at this time, around this time, all your solar and wind and so on had ramped up enough that energy storage was now becoming a problem. I need to store this excess energy that I generate during, say, the day and release it at night or so on. Right. And we were part of a team which was called an energy storage transition team, which actually, again, did this multidisciplinary approach where I played some of the technical roles. Basically, modeling storage, different technologies. Now, energy storage, there are maybe like 5 or 6 competing technologies which are possible at large scales. And back in 2019, it wasn't clear which of these would, or 18, 19, it wasn't clear which of these would go on to dominate.
Okay.
The batteries, would it be pump storage, and basically a few technologies. I'm not going to kind of give the details for that, but suffices to they behave very differently for different sizes and so on. So we had to take an kind of an educated guess on what would be the mix of technologies, say few years down the line. So on. We had to create economic structures for it. We had to basically model them and see what would the impact of, say, adding one more unit of storage would be and so on. So it's again a very interdisciplinary team, gave a very good outlook at a 30,000 feet level, but also allowed me to go deep into some of these technologies, which will prove to be useful later on. Around this time, the Indian setting was heating up a lot, right, in the power sector. I think solar had suddenly from 2014 to 2019 had a massive surge in interest in installations and so on. Prime Minister Modi had put a very huge task in 2024 that we have just about we're just about there, but I'm saying in 2014 that looked almost impossible.
Mhm.
Uh, but the situation was ramping up a lot. Um, what I also was passionate about was rural electrification back then. It's still a passion today. But essentially, energy access. And what we have seen is that energy is a very good sort of force multiplier for economic access, right? So if you have energy, you have access to things like data. When you can charge your mobile phone, you can actually power the transmission tower, which means you have access to data. You have access to banking, you have access to entertainment, you have access to
Yeah.
water, like pumps and so on. So it's a huge multiplier effect which it has on people's lives. And ultimately, that means that access to reliable electricity is suddenly a very important thing. And India is pretty much a place where this is happened at a crazy pace in the last 10 years also, right? So it's been
Mm.
an interesting field. Even today, I would say we may say we are 100% electrified, but I think there are several parts of India which are what we would call under electrified. So they don't have access to power when they want it and how much they want it, right? So they're very restricted by how much power they can get and where they can get it, when they can get it. Uh, so that's where I thought solar would play a huge role.
Mhm.
Um,
So what made you come back to India?
so I think it was a combination of personal personal things also. It was
Mm.
actually
Personal situations.
yeah. So I mean, in my case, I actually uh, had back then I had a girlfriend whom I wanted to marry,
Acha.
and yeah. So and we thought India might be a better place for us,
Mm.
uh, closer to family and more interesting work-wise also.
Mm.
Uh, the energy sector, I think India is pretty much the holy grail in terms of uh, this sector. I think there's a lot more work which has to be done,
That can be done,
very
yeah.
challenging, but also very interesting as a result of that, right? So I think it was a combination of both.
Mhm.
Um, so it
So
came back.
basically, for electrical engineers, this would be
Yeah,
a like from traditional electricity to this eco-friendly electricity, right? Uh,
yeah. So it is a move from traditional electricity to eco-friendly electricity, but it's also a little bit more, right? So when you look at rooftop solar, for example, your coal
mhm.
plant is somewhere in Chhattisgarh or central Maharashtra, Jharkhand, even I mean like so they're all huge plants which are a few hundred megawatts or gigawatts of size, and then you have a huge network of transmission lines and so on, right, which delivers power to you.
Mhm.
um, Today what you're doing is changing the paradigm a bit. So rooftop solar, for example, if you have your own house, you can actually put rooftop solar on the roof. You generate and consume power in the same facility, right? I mean, your own house.
No, but how does that work with the electricity department? Suppose I have a
No,
building and
correct.
I solar powered it and I am renting it, right?
Yeah.
So, how does it work? How do I,
So, if you, let's take the simpler case that you're a house owner. Like you
mm,
have your own house, you have your own roof on top. You actually apply if you're a homeowner, you can actually apply to the central government in this portal called the Suryagar portal, and claim a subsidy for the solar installation. Once you upload your details, essentially you can get a installer to come and install the entire system. So panels, inverter,
yes,
wiring,
yes,
everything, right? Uh, Subsequently, the electricity department, the DISCOM, if you're in Tamil Nadu, then TNEB, if you're
yeah,
in
yeah, state, according
Karnataka
to
and
the states,
BESCOM
yeah.
and so on, will come and depending on their jurisdiction, will come and install what is called a net meter. Now, this net meter allows you to measure the
How many
power.
kilowatts I have used?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is no, so it measures the number of units which you have essentially sent to the grid when you're generating more than you're consuming
Hmm. Is
during the
it
day.
kilobytes or something?
Yeah.
Kilobytes
So no, so kilowatt hour.
or
So is
kilowatts?
what you call units colloquially
Yeah,
in your
yeah.
electricity bill, right? That's a kilowatt hour. It's a unit of
Mm.
energy.
Hmm.
So how many kilowatt hour you're generating during the day and
Hmm.
sending to the grid. So basically, and then it calculates that. It also calculates what you're consuming at night. So both direction flow, right? So it calculates the net flow.
Okay.
Now that basically what you generate during the day, say you're in office and you're not actually using any electricity at home. So what you generate during the day is pushed to the discom, basically.
Okay.
And it gets offset against what you consume, say, at night.
Okay.
So you will, that's why it's called a net meter, right? It offsets
Hmm.
the total thing. And what's remaining is what you have to pay. And in some cases, that can be as low as, say, only 10% or 20% of your original bill,
Okay.
right? Uh, Depending on how much you have installed on top and how you have sized the system correctly or not, can be very low. Your bills can essentially go down to almost zero.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
I
Hmm.
think, yeah. So I think from an electrical engineer's perspective, this adds a whole set of uh, complications, because essentially now what you're doing is that your entire grid has been designed for accommodating all of these guys only in one direction, right?
Hmm.
I mean, usually what used to happen is I used to consume electricity and that was it. But now I have to both generate and consume. The grid
Consume.
has to that, which means uh, my discom has to manage supply and demand accordingly. So when there is a supply of solar, uh, my discom essentially has to uh, shut off some, say, coal
Some.
plants or ramp it down or something of that sort, and then ramp them back up at night. For example, so a best example of this was seen when, uh, not related to solar, but where, if you remember during COVID, uh, again, the Prime Minister asked to switch off all the lights. And
Yeah.
there's enough work on this where on how the discoms managed that
Hmm.
sudden drop in power for 5 minutes. So it's very advanced. And again, it's not
But
easy to
do we
talk
have
about.
a large plant which is which is working as a backup for the traditional electricity?
So that's the job of the discom and the load, so what is called the load dispatch centers, which sit on top of them to manage. So we have
Hmm.
large plants, we reduce some of them, so these are all linked to, contracts and commitments, which again, it becomes a very difficult topic to talk about in such small detail. But it's
Yeah.
a very fascinating topic, which I think most people don't realize even at an undergraduate level.
No, why I'm asking is this is basically for fresh graduates and undergraduates. For young people who are unfamiliar with the energy sector, could you explain the different areas within this field? What kinds of roles or opportunities exist for someone just starting out? And
I
how
think,
Indian market is uh, this thing for them, right?
yeah.
You're saying
So I
it's
think
booming. So,
correct. So what I would say is that there's a role for a number of people within the sector. So I think in just that, the energy sector is probably undergoing what I would call the great transformation. So you have uh, basically this sector, which has not changed appreciably for, say, 120 years since the times of Edison and Tesla and so on, and is suddenly undergoing this, over
massive.
the last 10, 15 years, is suddenly undergoing this massive transformation,
Hmm.
which is unprecedented, I think, and it's also basically it's unforeseen territory for all of us. So I'll give you a couple of examples. First is that essentially we have forced ourselves to have to shift away from fossil fuels towards solar, wind, renewables,
Yeah,
and
renewable energy.
basically
Yes.
green forms of electricity, right? So that is there. But parallelly, we are also doing one thing, which is that we are shifting away from fossil fuel vehicles towards electric vehicles.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it's already starting to pick up in certain segments in India. You'll be seeing a lot more Aethers and Olas, and
Yeah.
even three-wheeler, your big basket type companies, which now use electric vehicle
Okay.
delivery, this for as replacements for, say, Tata Ace or something of that sort, right? The traditional Tata Ace.
So
Uh,
those batteries will be charged through solar this thing
those
panels?
batteries will be currently they are charged from the grid. The hope is that they get charged from solar, right?
Hmm.
Some companies do this a lot. So, for example, BlueSmart, which is the cab company which operates in Delhi and I think in Bangalore. So they actually charge their uh, fleet through solar. So they
Hmm.
have a contract on that side where they procure solar and charge their fleet through it, right? So it is possible, and I think you'll start seeing a lot more of it as time passes.
Yeah.
Uh, then you have parallelly you have this other change, right, which is essentially you're changing from centralized electricity to
Distributed.
distributed sources of electricity, your rooftop solar, small wind farms, small batteries, where you're going from big to small, which is a huge
Hmm.
change when you look at it. Uh,
Yeah.
you're also giving energy access to 3 billion people for the first time. I think in this last 10, 15 years, since 2010,
Hmm.
somewhere in the range of 3 billion people have received electricity for the first time, or they're receiving meaningful amounts of electricity for the first time,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
So either way, I think that's a huge thing. Parallelly, you have things like, see, you also have a very low bar of very high bar of reliability now. I
Hmm.
think 20 years back, most people would have encountered some form of load shedding in their house,
Hmm.
right?
Yes. Now it's
Uh,
not happening.
2, 3 years. Now it doesn't happen anymore
Yeah.
because now the demand for all of this is so high. See, it still happens, by the way, in the villages and so on.
Hmm.
In cities, at least, for example, because you have your Wi-Fi router, which is connected to, which needs
Hmm.
an electricity backup.
Hmm.
You have backups for pretty much everything which is
Yeah.
critical, right? So
Yeah.
your demand for reliable electricity has also become much higher. So
Hmm.
all of these together are making a huge change in how we operate.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think this means that there is space for pretty much anybody across the board, right? So it's no longer just an electrical engineer's thing. So energy is a very interdisciplinary subject, which comes to why what what I'm doing right now
Hmm.
at the university. But basically, you can get from like material science and physicists and people who are very strong in these things, who work on say battery technologies, semiconductors, uh, and things like that.
Yeah.
You have
I will.
your
I,
yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. Actually, I wanted to ask you as a director at Atria University. See, you went to Cornell University and you did a project there, internship there, and that's how you got introduced to this energy sector, energy field, where through
correct.
solar you're creating electricity, and that's how you got interested in this field. So, for Indian students, other than your students, Atria University students, are you tying up with the engineering colleges where you're going them and making them aware of this type of there are careers roles which they can take up in future? Are you conducting internships for them like that? you know are you
So
making
we do have
students up?
internships, and I mean we do have internships, and we're reaching out to a wider community than just our students.
Hmm.
I think our own university is fairly new. And I have also gone back to my alma mater and actually done talks on this and so on, and to other people in this community. But I think I'm very happy to, I think, engage with students on, I mean, it doesn't really matter if they are, which college they are in. I think there is
Yeah.
a requirement probably for so many engineers to be reskilled and trained in this particular sector
Yes.
that is just not there, right? And that one college cannot do that. I think it's
Hmm.
really a nationwide effort which has to happen.
No, there
Um,
are so many engineering colleges in India, and there are
right. So
so
the thing
many
is that
electrical and
what
civil
we have done-
engineers which are required for this particular solar rooftops,
so
right?
that's why I said. So let me come back to it, right? Like I mean, not looking at solar, but looking at a broader energy sector, you have a space for people in even like material science, chemistry, etc., where they can
Okay.
work on batteries, they can work on new technologies in solar, in batteries, etc. Uh, even people like people who learn electronics. So
Mhm.
there's a whole range of power electronics, there's a whole range of battery management systems, bunch of electronics and embedded systems which are there, which need very good electrical and electronics engineers. You
And
have
data analyst, you need a lot of data analysts, right?
lot of data analysis because, as I said, so what is now happening is that every house, especially houses which have a smart meter, they are generating so much data. Every house which has solar is generating so much data. There is a lot more forecasting which is needed for weather and climate, because now what has happened is I need to be able to tell you exactly when that solar will generate how much,
Mhm.
right? So there's data science which is there across the board. um, you also have things like mechanical engineering, which is very important to this. In electric vehicles, in terms of traditional automotive engineering, also, it's a mix of automotive engineering and electrical engineering, right? So e-mobility is essentially a mix of that. But you have things like basically you have to develop chassis and test out stuff, battery thermals. So there's a bunch of things for mechanical engineers to do. Design the support structures for solar, design different tools, etc. Uh, so yeah, so I think it's really a very interdisciplinary field, and I would say uh, so we actually run an internship program where we have taken students from outside also
Okay.
to work on problems that we are working on in our university. So I run a center of excellence there, which means that it's more like an R&D organization than a traditional department. So we
Mhm.
do have problems. We have actually taken students. In fact, I think there was a student who was spending her summer in India. She was, I think, working she studies at Cornell. She's actually come and done an internship here. Of course,
Oh,
I mean,
that's nice.
uh, on certain topics that we are actively working. So I think that's happening definitely.
Mm.
All
So
right. So
we are going to about to end this thing. Like, oh, I would last words like from you. What advice would you give to someone who's passionate about clean energy? And are there any particular industries or roles within energy that are more accessible for newcomers? How can they start their journey in this industry?
I think uh, it's a very open industry because it's really dependent on many factors. One is that I think my thing is that the technology is changing every 5 years. So it's really your education is only meaningful for maybe 2 3 years, right?
That's it.
Uh, Fundamentals, of course, will be useful throughout your career. But my point is that the technology which is there today is very different from the technology which will be there, say, 3 years or 5 years down the line, which means it's important to be able to be in a constant learning mode,
Yeah.
right? Constantly learn, pick up new skills, reskill yourself. If you look at my career also, they've essentially been very different things I've done. So after coming back to India, I helped set up a rooftop solar program on the tech side, none of which was directly relevant to things I had done uh,
Yeah.
in the US or in Canada or even during my masters. Had
Mhm.
to essentially relearn a bunch of things
Yeah.
there. Uh, Ultimately, that's the mark of somebody who will actually, uh, be able to climb up the ladder in a sense, which is that ability to relearn constantly is very important because the field itself is so rapidly evolving. This is
Yeah.
also true of fields like AI and
Yeah.
computer science. Basically. It's also rapidly evolving. So that skill set is true for almost everybody in this
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah. Every
The
sector needs it.
second thing is, I would say, is people who are more hands-on and kind of driven by projects and tinkering and so on will succeed a lot more than people who are just
Using
reading
more of
something
their
which is
brains.
technical, right? Because practical knowledge is something which allows newcomers to make a mark. And I
So
would say
are
just
they have to do internships with Atria University sort of place, or how do they go
I
about
think
it? They have
so.
interest in the
There
energy
is no
sector.
shortage of. there is no shortage of companies you can work with. So I mean, like for example, there are by my estimate around 10,000 companies which do rooftop solar in India. Just
Okay.
right. Even if you don't want to move out of your place, there is a space for just I mean, you can kind of do an internship then and there, right? So those opportunities are there. There's a space to do masters and PhDs and so on if you are academically inclined. Um, so I don't think, I mean, see, people are welcome to say work in my team and so on, but I'm saying it's not the only way forward. There are lots of options which are there. There are also lots of roles. So, for example, there are companies which manufacture solar panels. There are other companies which will install these panels,
Yeah.
right? So the EPCs and so
It's
on.
still
There are
scattered. It's not like in one
others,
place everything is
they're
happening.
very scattered, right? So you have consolidation in some cases. You don't. It's very decentralized in other cases. But there is enough and more opportunity there. One estimate is that we will need around 1 lakh skilled engineers to install solar based on uh, the PM Surya Ghar scheme, right? Some of
Okay.
these now all of these engineers are essentially today's electricians who have to be trained to get there.
Yeah.
So there are even things like training and so on, which are new opportunities which are opening up.
Okay.
This is with solar, but you look at other fields which the government is promoting, wind, green hydrogen, etc. Then there is no shortage of opportunity there also. And there's no shortage of information also. There are plenty of courses which can be done and online and so on. But nothing
How much they
compares
have to invest and how much they will be earning? Like, India is like it's not a rich country. It's a developing
to
country, and
me
people
that the
are like,
investment today to me, the investment today is not much because I think there is a sort of easy information available. Just IIT Bombay, I mean, the IITs have NPTEL, other universities also have courses which are online. There's Coursera, there's Udemy, there's edX. I don't think there is a shortage of information. I think there is an important need to kind of actually do it and complete these courses and then kind of implement that, right? Uh, I think that's where the difference is, which is that most people aren't uh, getting the context of where this will apply to their field. Uh, that's where your internships, that's where your the practical experience will come in handy. I mean, for example, so how we do it at the university is that um, so around 75% of our course work is project-based learning.
okay.
So we, first of all, we don't have traditional departments. There's no
Mm.
electrical or mechanical department. Instead, you can get a degree like a bachelor's in energy science or e-mobility.
Like that.
And
Yeah.
this is again UGC recognized. So it's not like it's a, uh,
Mhm.
so it's, I mean, there is a rigor to it. At the same time, um, being a fully independent university, uh, it has the ability to set courses in a certain way. So what we do is that only 25% of our work, of our assessments and our time spent, less than 25% is actually on theoretical concepts. What we spend a lot more time on is connecting the theoretical concept to the practical knowledge.
Practical.
And that's
Yeah.
where I would focus on. Basically, I think if the college that he or she is in doesn't allow that, then I think you have to just search outside for that experience. But I think that's where the important thing is. So, for example, if you're learning about batteries, there are plenty of companies which are setting up battery manufacturing plants, which are setting up battery, franchises for selling batteries, etc. So, where you will work with people who would have worked on the field, they actually will know what the problems are on the field, etc. So, there, and by the way, uh, this is true, right? I mean, you have dealerships across the country for batteries. So, I mean, if you go buy your inverter, home inverter and battery,
Yes.
uh, they have a wealth of experience in these fields. So,
Mm.
so the opportunities are very different. So, I mean, for example, if somebody
How
wants
good
to,
is Atria in placements? I'm sorry
so
to interrupt.
it's a very new university. So, I think
Huh.
we are yet to have our first round of placements. I think the
Oh, okay.
the first batch will appear in basically next academic year, which
Next
starts
second.
in a month or
25.
so.
Hmm.
Yeah. The 2024-25 will be the first graduating batch of
Okay.
undergraduate. But we are fairly confident because we've seen their internships and their track record, and we know exactly that uh, they
Okay.
fit in well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and that in fact, a few of them have already started receiving offers from their offers to convert their internships to full-time roles.
Okay.
One thing I would last
Yeah.
shout
Yeah.
out I
Yeah.
would
Please,
make
please, please.
graduate
Yeah.
is that I think this is a sector where there are no, it's not job losses are not happening, right? There
Yeah.
is a
It's
lot of
booming
promise
market.
and there's a
Yes.
lot. Yes, and given the scale of the climate crisis, this is probably the most existential threat that we have as a species, as humanity. And it's really an energy crisis if you think about it. It was created by fossil fuels, which means the energy sector has to tackle it. And the scale of the problem is so large that so yeah, so I was saying that because of the scale of the problem, the scale of the opportunity is also very high, right?
Yeah.
So I think this could be a sector where you will find a lot of things, but the people who will really succeed in the sector were the people who will know how to keep innovating, keep retraining themselves, keep learning constantly, because the
Mm.
sector is also changing very rapidly as we speak. So
Yeah.
I think for new graduates and for students who are in college, that's the biggest advice I'd give. Stay in the sector, but continue to grow,
Yeah.
not build a knowledge base.
Can you share an example of an innovative and sustainable solution you developed that you're particularly proud of? Have you done any sort of innovation?
Uh, no, so I think I mean, see, we currently run a research lab. So there's a lot of innovation which is going on, which is happening there as we speak.
Yeah.
Can't talk about all of them even
Okay. All right.
confidentially
So
and all.
confidential.
But I
Okay.
think broadly in the solar sector, in the battery space, there's a lot of work which is happening in the university itself.
Mm. So the newcomers who are interested in energy sector, they can come from engineering background, they can come from accounts background and
Yeah,
data science and AI. And also, do you need content writers?
you do because I mean, ma'am, ultimately all of this are like solar, for example, is a retail sale, right? So you do need content writers, you need people again for SEO purposes, you need marketing experts, you need uh, I would say, in fact, in a company like a solar company, uh, only maybe 20 to 30% of them will be very core technical people, right? When you are selling solar to, say, industries or to residential customers, only 20 to 30% of them will actually be core technical people. Everybody else is in marketing, sales, accounts, HR, and so on, right? So I don't think there is a uh, shortage of those roles either.
Mhm. And research and development, do you offer PhD or is it just at the
So
UG level
we do
itself they are
offer,
doing
in fact, we are
research?
starting a master's and PhD program now. So it's a master's by research, which means the coursework is minimal and basically the focus is on research and nothing else. And there's a PhD program also in starting in energy sciences and AI. These are the two fields that we are offering.
What about UG?
So
UG,
UG we have,
it's a
yeah.
practical projects, but no research.
No, so I mean, in UG, we offer basically internship windows where they can use that internship window either to do an internship with a company outside or they can sit with the CoE and do research activities.
Oh, like that. Okay.
These projects are also derived from our research. So, for example, we ask them to set up a mini solar plant, or we ask them to set up like a battery, a small battery, and so on. All of this is basically a scaled down version of what we do in research there.
Yes. Awesome.
So they are linked. They're not completely independent. But
Mhm.
of course, with undergraduates, I think the focus is more on making them skilled to tackle the job market more than anything else.
Thank you so much. And it was such an insightful and informative podcast. I am
Yeah.
sure the graduates and people who are interested in energy sciences, they would have got a lot of information and how to go about their journey, how to start their own journey. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me.
Thank
And
you.
it was an honor to host you. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you,
Abhishek.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bharat.